Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevayam. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevayam. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevayam. Om Aganda Timarandasya Ganajana Shivakaya Chakshur Umilitam Yena Tajma Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, and my spiritual master opened my eyes with the torch of knowledge. I offer my respectful obeisances unto him. Hare Krishna. The following video series is a summary of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Srimad Bhagavatam was translated into English by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Also included are His in-depth commentaries known as purports. These purports unpack the often complex and symbolic language of the text, making it understandable to a wider audience. The Srimad Bhagavatam, also known as the Bhagavata Purana, is considered the most important of sacred scriptures. Composed around 5,000 years ago, it is considered the ripened fruit of the tree of Vedic literature and the original commentary on the Vedanta-sutra. The author of Srimad Bhagavatam is Çréla Vyäsadeva. He is also the compiler of the Vedas, classified as a Purana, a vast genre of ancient stories and knowledge encompassing history, philosophy, and spiritual teachings. Srimad Bhagavatam includes stories of avatars, creation narratives, lives of saints and sages, philosophy discourses, and practical guidance for spiritual life. Divided into 12 cantos with over 18,000 verses covering 10 subject matters. 1. The elemental creation. 2. The secondary creation. 3. The planetary systems. 4. Protection by the Lord. 5. The creative impetus. 6. Manvatars. 7. The science of God. 8. The dissolution. 9. Liberation. And 10. The supreme shelter. In the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya Lila, chapter 25, text 143 and 144, Lord Chaitanya, speaking to Prakrisananda Saraswati, tells him. Translation. The meaning of the Vedanta-sutra is present in Srimad Bhagavatam. The full purport of the Mahabharata is also there. The commentary of the Bhagavad Gayatri is also there and fully expanded with all Vedic knowledge. Srimad Bhagavatam is the Supreme Purana. It was compiled by the Supreme Personality of Godhead in His incarnation as Vyasadeva. There are 12 cantos, 335 chapters, and 18,000 verses. Canto 8, chapters 17 through 24. Chapter 17. The Supreme Lord agrees to become Aditi's son. This chapter describes how the Supreme Personality of Godhead, pleased by Aditi's strict Payovrata vow, appeared before her in His divine four-armed form. Upon seeing the Lord, Aditi was overwhelmed with ecstatic love. Her voice choked and her body trembled. Although she struggled to find words, she eventually offered heartfelt prayers. The Lord, pleased with her devotion, agreed to become her son. He assured her that He would incarnate as a plenary expansion to protect her sons, the Demigods, and defeat their enemies, the demons. After giving His word, the Lord disappeared. Following His instruction, Aditi then engaged in the service of her husband, Kashyapa Muni. Kashyapa, in meditation, realized that the Lord had entered his being. He then placed his semen in Aditi's womb. Lord Brahma, known as Hiranyagarbha, also understood that the Supreme Lord was now in Aditi's womb and offered prayers, celebrating the Lord's upcoming appearance. A verse from chapter 17 is text 5. Tam netra gocharam viksha sahasrutaya sataram sanama putvi kayena dandavat priti vibhala. Translation. When the Supreme Personality of Godhead became visible to Aditi's eyes, Aditi was so overwhelmed by transcendental bliss that she at once stood up and then fell to the ground like a rod to offer the Lord her respectful obeisances. Chapter 18. Lord Vamanadeva, the Dwarf Incarnation. This chapter describes the divine appearance of Lord Vamanadeva, the dwarf incarnation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Lord appeared from the womb of Aditi on an extremely auspicious day. Fully equipped with his divine symbols, a conch shell, disc, club, and lotus, his appearance brought immense happiness to all three planetary systems and was celebrated by the demigods and sages. He was born with a transcendental blackish hue and dressed in yellow garments. After his birth, the Lord assumed the form of a dwarf, astonishing his parents, Kashyapa Muni and Aditi. The great sages, led by Kashyapa, joyfully performed his birthday ceremony. During his sacred dead ceremony, he was honored by all the great demigods and sages. Lord Vamanadeva then went to the sacrificial arena of Bali Maharaj, where the priests of the Bhrigu dynasty were performing sacrifices, carrying a staff, umbrella, and water pot. He entered the arena, and his effulgence diminished the power of all the priests. Seeing the Lord, Bali Maharaj was overjoyed. He washed the Lord's feet, and, accepting the water on his head, Bali then eagerly welcomed the Lord and asked him to request any benediction he desired. A verse from chapter 18 is text 26. Yajamana pramudito darshaniyam manoramam rupanurupavayavam tasma asanam aharat. Translation. Bali Maharaj, jubilant at seeing Lord Vamanadeva, whose beautiful limbs contributed equally to the beauty of his entire body, offered him a seat with great satisfaction. Chapter 19. Lord Vamanadeva begs charity from Bali Maharaj. This chapter describes how Lord Vamanadeva requested 3 paces of land from Bali Maharaj, and how Bali's guru, Sukracharya, tried to stop him. Upon being asked by Bali to request anything he desired, the Lord praised the heroic dynasty of Bali Maharaj. He then humbly requested just 3 paces of land, which Bali happily agreed to grant, considering it a trivial amount. However, Bali's spiritual master, Sukracharya, understood that Vamana was Lord Vishnu in disguise, and that his true intention was to help the demigods reclaim their kingdom. Sukracharya immediately forbid Bali to fulfill his promise. He advised Bali that a promise could be broken in certain situations, such as to save one's life or for the welfare of others. Arguing that this was such a case, Sukracharya tried to convince Bali that by giving the land, he would lose his entire kingdom and power, but Bali remained firm in his commitment. A verse from chapter 19 is text 25. Pumso yam samshritir hetur asantoso rita karmayo yarichayo papanena santoso mukte smrita. Translation. Material existence causes discontent in regard to fulfilling one's lusty desires and achieving more and more money. This is the cause for the continuation of material life, which is full of repeated birth and death. But one who is satisfied by that which is obtained by destiny is fit for liberation from his material existence. Chapter 20. Bali Maharaj surrenders the universe. This chapter describes how Bali Maharaj remained true to his word despite his guru's warning, and how Lord Vamanadeva then assumed his gigantic form. After hearing Sukracharya's advice to withdraw his promise, Bali Maharaj contemplated the ethics of his situation. He concluded that as a king, it was his duty to honor his promise, especially to a Brahmin. He reasoned that lying is the greatest sin, and that the worldly power and fame are temporarily. True glory, he decided, comes from a good reputation and sacrifice for others' welfare. Even if Vamanadeva was Lord Vishnu in disguise and took everything from him, Bali resolved he would not resent him. He then firmly proceeded to give everything he had in charity to the Lord. In response, Lord Vamanadeva immediately expanded his form to a cosmic size, revealing his identity as the all-pervading Supreme Lord. Bali was granted a divine vision and could see all the planetary systems and living entities resting within the Lord's body. The Lord, in his gigantic form, took his first step covering the entire earth. With his second step, he covered the entire upper planetary systems. With all space now occupied, there was no place left for him to take his third step. A verse from chapter 20 is text 5. Naham bipemi nirayan nadhanyad aksu karnavat nastana chavanam ritur yata ripa pralambanat. Translation. I do not fear hell, poverty, an ocean of distress, fall down from my position, or even death itself, as much as I fear cheating a Brahmin. Chapter 21. Bali Maharaj arrested by the Lord. This chapter describes how Lord Vamanadeva arrested Bali Maharaj to glorify his devotion. After the Lord's second giant step covering the upper planetary system, his effulgent toenail reached Brahmaloka. Lord Brahma and the great sages offered humble prayers and worship, washing the Lord's feet. However, Bali Maharaj's demoniac followers, enraged that their king had been deprived of his kingdom, attacked Lord Vishnu's eternal associates. Despite Bali's warnings, they were defeated and sent to the lower planetary systems. Understanding the Lord's plan, Garuda then bound Bali Maharaj with the ropes of Varuna, arresting him. The Lord then asked Bali for a third step of land, for which there was no room left. Lord Vishnu appreciated Bali's determination to keep his promise, declaring that Bali's new abode would be the planet Sutala, a place more opulent than heaven. The Lord did this to show Bali's integrity and his commitment to charity. A verse from chapter 21 is text 22. Balena Sachivair Bhujya Durgair Mantra Sadbhavihi Samadhi Bir Upashascha Kalam Natyeti Vaigana. Translation. No one can surpass the time representation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead by material power, by council of ministers, by intelligence, by diplomacy, by fortress, by mystic mantras, by drugs, by herbs, or by any other means. Chapter 22. Bali Maharaj surrenders his life. This chapter describes how Lord Vamanadeva was pleased by the behavior of Bali Maharaj and blessed him with a kingdom and his personal protection. With all his possessions taken, Bali Maharaj understood his failure to fulfill his promise. He knew that a deviation from truth was a great sin, worse than suffering in hell. Remembering the unwavering determination of his grandfather, Prahlad Maharaj, Bali offered his own head as the third place for the Lord's final step. He reasoned that great personalities sacrificed everything for the satisfaction of the Lord, and he was ready to do the same. While Bali was being held by ropes of Varuna, his grandfather Prahlad Maharaj appeared, along with Lord Brahma and Bali's wife, Vindhyavani. They praised Bali's devotion and prayed for his release, confirming that the Lord had delivered him by taking all his material possessions. The Lord, pleased by Bali's integrity and devotion, explained that worldly opulence is a danger for a non-devotee, but a benediction for a devotee. As a final blessing, the Lord offered Bali the planet Sutala as his kingdom. Then he promised to personally serve as Bali's doorman, using his disc to protect him, thus glorifying Bali's surrender and devotion. A verse from chapter 22 is text 25. Yada kadachi jivatma samsara ninja karma bi nanayonish vanisoyam parosam gatim arajit. Translation. While rotating the cycle of birth and death again and again in different species, because of his own fruitive activities, the dependent living entity, by good fortune, may happen to become a human being. This human birth is very rarely obtained. Chapter 23. The Demigods regain the heavenly planets. This chapter describes the conclusion of Lord Vamadeva's pastime with Bali Maharaj. After Bali was arrested by Garuda, the Supreme Lord praised him for his supreme truthfulness and devotion. Lord Brahma and Bali's grandfather, Prahlad Maharaj, appeared to confirm that Bali had achieved the highest perfection, liberation through total surrender. Prahlad offered beautiful prayers, praising the Lord for his causeless mercy, which extends even to the demons. Satisfied, the Lord blessed Bali by placing him on the planet Sutala, a kingdom more opulent than heaven. and promised to personally guard his gate. With his promise to Aditi fulfilled, the Lord re-established Indra as the king of the heavenly planets. The chapter concludes with all the demigods, sages, and liberated beings glorifying the Lord's wonderful activities and confirming that hearing and chanting about his transcendental pastimes is the most auspicious activity for any conditioned soul. A verse from chapter 23 is text 9. Sri Bhagavan Uvacha Vasta Prarada Bhadram Te Prayahi Sutalam Layam Modamanasva Putrena Gatinam Sukham Avaha. Translation. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, My dear son Prahlad, all good fortune unto you. For the time being, please go to the place known as Sutala, and there enjoy happiness with your grandson and your other relatives and friends. Chapter 24, Matsya, the Lord's Fish Incarnation. This chapter describes the Supreme Lord's incarnation as a fish, Matsya, and his saving of King Satyavraha from a universal inundation. The Supreme Lord appears in various forms to protect devotees and religion. He is untouched by material qualities, a sign of his divine, controlling power. At the end of the last kalpa, a demon named Hayagriva stole the Vedas from Lord Brahma. To retrieve them, the Lord appeared as a fish. Later, during the reign of Chakshusha Manu, a pious king named Satyavraha was performing austerities. While offering water, he found a tiny fish in his palms. The fish, who was the Lord, asked for protection. The king placed the fish in his water jug, but it grew so quickly that he had to move it to a well, then a lake, and finally the ocean. When the ocean also couldn't contain it, the king realized the fish was the Supreme Lord. The Lord then revealed that a universal flood would occur in 1 week. He instructed the king to gather all kinds of seeds, herbs, and living entities in a boat. The Lord promised to appear as a large fish with a horn, to which the king could tie the boat to for safety. True to his word, the flood came. The king tied the boat to the Lord's horn and, while being protected, received divine knowledge from the Lord. A verse from chapter 24 is text 5. Sri Sukha Uvacha Govi Prasura Sadhunam Chandasam Apiche Spara Raksam Icham Stanur Dante Dharmasyaratyaschaivahi. Translation. Sri Sukadeva Goswami said, O king, for the sake of protecting the cows, Brahmins, demigods, devotees, the Vedic literature, religious principles, and principles to fulfill the purpose of life, the Supreme Personality of Godhead accepts the forms of incarnations. That's the end of Canto 8. Hare Krishna